Now, it has been 6 years since the bombshell documentary Leaving Neverland called into question the king of pop, Michael Jackson's reputation with allegations he'd sexually abused young children. Now, in a follow-up documentary, 2 of his alleged victims are seeking justice for crimes they believe people knew about. Michael Jackson and his estate deny all allegations against them, but having watched the documentary, Nadia, where do you sit with all of this information now?
Well, I watched the previous one and the new one last night. I watched it all together. My God, my heart broke for those people. I mean, just absolutely broke again. And that need for validation, that need for people to believe is such a powerful thing. And I can't separate an artist from their crimes. I adored Michael Jackson when I was growing up. I mean, he was a musical genius. There's no two ways about it. And I loved him. I loved him when he was a small boy. My sisters and I would try and do all the dances and everything. How can that not be tarnished? How not? You know, it's like I wouldn't watch Jimmy Savile's best bits through all his series without feeling sick and upset for those children. But a lot of people don't feel like that. And it's funny because I was reading an article with the director of the documentary, and he said, what I don't understand is how many people will say, but he didn't have a childhood, Mike. He said, almost like that's a reason or an excuse for what he then did. And I thought, yeah, that has been used over and over, like a mantra. He lost out on his childhood, he lost out. So he was practically a child because... And so all of those things, you know, a Michael Jackson tune could come on now and I could just, like, go with it, and then I'm, like, pulled back when I think of...
Yeah.
But I've had many arguments with my mother-in-law over the years about her. She doesn't separate artists and their crimes at all. Art is art, whatever. Alleged crime.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, exactly that. I mean, he was never convicted of any charge, and he and his family, but like we say, always denied all of these allegations. But clearly this second documentary now is stoking up another wave of activity around this entire case and garnering a lot of attention. And you can't help but just, whether you're a fan or not, it is difficult to separate, isn't it? As much as you may have been a wonderful fan, you loved him back in the day. You can't help it.
That's the two things is that, one, you know, the form of abuse, I think that really just always grips people much more tighter. And secondly, regards to that, he, to many, was their childhood musical icon. So I don't feel the music will ever stop playing. But what we never want is for victims' and survivors' voice to stop being heard. And I think that's the most significant and key thing. But I think with anything, you know, the most important thing that people need to understand, and it's really hard, especially when people always say, oh, why does people come out years or 20 years, 30 years later? You know, when it comes to abuse, and especially sexual abuse, what's the notion around it is shame, and that sometimes it's the child's fault. And maybe even at that point, they don't realise that what was being done was wrong. And it's not until they get to an older age, and if it's someone that's in the public eye or a family member, they're too scared or feel too vulnerable to come out. So this is why it comes out later. It's a very, very challenging and upsetting situation to see the case and see, should I say, the documentary again, you know, and it's really important just in that stance, that to think about people who have been through it, who's going through it, and keep opening a safe space for them to feel that they can speak out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the case of these particular 2, when they had children of their own, suddenly their children get to the age that they were, and they suddenly look and go, oh, my God, that was not right. Because they look back and they think, well, I loved him, I loved Michael, I thought Michael loved me, I thought that what happened was from a place of love, what allegedly happened, and then they see their own children and they go, and I think that is why it took them so long to come forward. But
and that's when they both had their breakdowns, really, wasn't it, around that time?
But I think with anything, you know, if you park this particular story, because obviously it's going to come to court in November 2026. Now, they've fought very hard to get to this point. You know, they've been knocked back many, many times. And as you say, they want the acknowledgement. They want somebody to say. So they're going up for the corporations, for the estates, whatever. Parking this story, if you look back through history, there's always been this tendency among corporations to protect the asset because that is where the money is. So they're protecting the money. Can I separate, Michael Jackson from Michael Jackson's music? Yes, I can, because I think a good song is a good song. Are we going to tear down paintings in the National Gallery because the artist had a dubious past, whatever? I think you can separate art and thing. But, of course, what happens is that it still makes money.
And that has to be protected.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That is the problem. Yeah, it's such an interesting one. Like I said, you watched it all last night, didn't you?
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Really was.
A tough watch.